All right, here we go. Part B, number 6. Fill in the blanks to write the factored form. So we're going to factor this quadratic into two binomials. And the way we do that is we make a big box and a T. And we know that in our box, the first term goes first. The last term goes last, and we're going to split that middle term up into those two other boxes. And the way we do that is by finding out what multiplies to give us the C here. So we're going to write down factors of 54. That includes 1 in 54. That includes 2 in 27. That includes 3 in 20. Nope, 3 in 18. Numbers are hard. 4, nope. 5, nope. 6 and 9. Now, I know they're both going to have the same sign because they are, it's multiplying to give us a positive 54, but it's got to add up to a negative 15. So that means negative numbers. All right, adding up to a negative 15, well, it's not going to be this one because that would add up to negative 55. Boop. It's not going to be this one because this would be negative 29. Boop. It's not going to be this one because this would be negative 21. Boop. And it is going to be this one because negative 6 and negative 9 do add up to negative 15. So that's our winner, winner, chicken dinner. Negative 6 and negative 9. Now the way we finish this is we figure out the GCF here. What goes into x squared and negative 6x? X does. Okay, now what would you have to multiply that x by to get x squared? You would have to multiply it by x. So you can figure out those two pretty quickly. Now you can figure out the next one pretty quick too because this x, if I multiply it, needs to be multiplied by a negative 6 to give us this negative 6x. So I know in the top right I need a negative 6. All right, in the bottom left, I know I need a negative 9x here. So that means I'll be multiplying my x at the top by a negative 9. All right, all right. So we've gotten pretty darn good at that over the last week. So x minus 6 and x minus 9. Cool, cool, cool. Now we could solve that if we were asked to. If we had it equal to 0, we could be like x minus 6 equals 0, x minus 9 equals 0. And you could solve that, you know how, but they didn't ask for it. Okay, you could, you'd be like x equals 6, x equals 9. All right, but they didn't ask for it. All they asked for is that. Cool, cool. The next one's pretty darn similar. So the next one, we're factoring it again. So we're going to have two binomials. We're going to have our box. We're going to have our T. Very similar. Top left, we're going to put the first term, 3x squared. Bottom right, we'll put the last term, the 20. Now, the only difference here is that this one started with a 3x squared. All right, and I can't factor that out. There's no GCF for this to look at, to worry about. So that 3 doesn't get factored out with a GCF. So the way we take care of that is on top of our little T-chart, instead of just putting 20 like we normally do, we're going to do 3 times 20. So if you have a number out front, the only difference that it makes is instead of just having this C term to multiply to, it's going to be that front number, the A, multiplied by that C. Okay, so it's going to be the 3 multiplied by the 20. So it's going to be 60 up here. Factors of 60 include 1 and 60, 2 and 30, 3 and 20, 4 and 15, 5 and 12, 6 and 10, 7 no, 8 no, 9 no. That's the end of my list. Of those factors, which is the winner, winner, chicken dinner, which one adds up to give me 19? It's not that one. It's not the second one. It's not the third one. It is the fourth one. 4 plus 15 does add up to 19. So I know that I'm going to have a 4x and a 15x down here. So again, we've got to find the length and the width that would give us that area. So again, we're finding the GCF of these two terms. What goes into both of those? Well, they both have an x. Cool, cool, cool. Now if I look at what goes into, if I do the vertical now, what goes into 3x squared and 15x, well, I know they both have an x, but 3 and 15 have a common factor of 3 also. So 3 goes into 3, 3 goes into 15, that's why there's a 3x on top. Cool, cool. And let's finish that top length, 3x, and then after that, what's going to go in this spot? Well, what do 4x and 20 have in common? That's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is, what am I going to multiply this x by to get 4x? That might be a more simple way to look at it. You're going to multiply it by 4. So I know that one of my factors is 3x plus 4. All right, and I could think of the same thing when I do this bottom one. I have a 3x here. What am I going to multiply that 3x by to get 15x? That's 5. That's it. Cool, cool. So that one looked like it was going to be a lot more difficult because it had a number in the front, but all we had to do is remember to multiply that front number by the number we usually use out there. All right, this next one. Okay, this one's back to the easy ones again. All right, I'm factoring x squared plus 3x minus 10. So I know an x squared is going to go here, a minus 10 is going to go here, and I know on the top of my table is going to go a minus 10. Factors of negative 10 include 1 and 10. It's got to be a negative 10, so negative 1 and 10, or 1 and negative 10. Negative 2 and 5, or 2 and negative 5. They do have to add up to 3. So of these factors, the one that adds up to 3, it's not that one. It's not that one. It is this one. So I have a negative 2x and a positive 5x. Cool, cool. Now again, this is too easy to start right there, man. You can get your x and your x because we know when you multiply them, you'll get that x squared. All right, down here we'll have our minus 2. Up here I'll have my plus 5. I know I didn't really explain it, but I kind of think we're getting it just from what I've seen in class. All right, so what they're saying here is we already know that the x minus 2 is a factor. Basically asking what was the other factor, and it was x plus 5. So x plus 5 is what I'm looking for on number 8. All right, number 9. Number 9 is a really large number. Yeah, it's a big one. We're going to do it. We're going to factor out the GCF. There's a number that goes into both of those. It's a negative 4. So what I can do is I can factor out a negative 4. And remember, you do have a calculator, so if I factor out a negative 4, that leaves me with 4t squared plus, I think it's 625. Okay, you do have a calculator, and there is a shortcut that I'll tell you at the end of the video. All right, so this is still a really big number, but there's no more GCF. So I know that in my box, I've got a 4t squared here and a 625. I promise on your test, I use smaller numbers. All right, so, and it gets worse because on my t-chart, because this has a number in front of the t squared, you've got to do 4 times 625. I'm trying to remember what 4 times 625 is. Let's see, 2 times 625 is 1250. So 4 times 625, oh, I know what that is. It's 2500. That's what we started with. All right, it's 2500. So I need to think of factors of 2500, and there's a lot. The trick is I know that there's no middle term here. So I know that they have to add up to 0. All right, so there's a ton of factors, but I know they have to add up to 0. And if I use something like 1 in 2500, that's not even close to 0. I know the only way to add up to 0 was a negative 2500. Whoop, go back a step. This should have been a negative 625. It's my first day. Okay, because I factored a negative out of that positive. So, all right. So I know it's got to be, to get 0, the only way you're going to get 0 is if it's the same number on both sides. So the same number multiplied by itself to give you 2,500. All right, and I know because I've already done this one, it's going to be 50. 50 times negative 50 gives you negative 2,500. And it adds up to 0. So that's going to be a 50t and a negative 50t. There is a shortcut. I'll show it in just a little bit. And the ones on your test, the numbers are smaller. All right, so we're looking for GCF. What number goes into 4 and also negative 50? Well, that's 2. They both have a t. Okay, what goes into 4 and positive 50? Well, that's 2. And they both have a t. 2 times what gives me negative 50? That's negative 25. 2 times what gives me positive 50? That's a positive 25. So my answer is a 2t minus 25 and a 2t plus 25. And I did factor out a negative 4 at the beginning, so negative 4. And I forgot to read the question. It was talking about something dropping from a helicopter, blah, blah, blah. So what is the height, h, when it hits the ground? The answer is 0. The height when the package is on the ground is 0. So remember, to solve it, you have to make each piece equal to 0. So 2t minus 25 equals 0. Add the 25 over, and then divide by 2. 25 divided by 2, according to my calculator, it's 12.5. So that's 12.5 seconds. Seems like it's falling for a long time. I'm not going to use the other one because it would give me a negative answer. So the answer to this question is t equals 12.5 seconds. Again, the one on the test has smaller numbers. And I will go back in a minute and show you a shortcut. This one. I could have used that same trick here. Okay. I could use the same trick here. What I would have done first, though, is I would have rearranged it to be 2,500 minus 16t squared. So then I have a perfect square minus a perfect square. So to use that shortcut in this situation, I'm going to do it in this little bottom corner over here. It would have been the square root of 2,500, 50, minus the square root of 16, 4, and the square root of t squared. And then your other factor would have been 50 plus 4t. All right, that is a shortcut. Do you have to know it for tomorrow's test? Heck no. The numbers aren't nearly as big as this. All right, guys, this was a long video. Hope you liked it. Bye. All right, number 10. Yes. So number 10, I noticed right away that there's a number that all three of these terms have in common. Okay, they all have a factor of 2. So I'm going to factor out a 2. I also noticed that they all have x's. So I'm going to factor out the lowest amount of x's that they all have, which is an x to the first power. When I do that, it's like dividing. 2 divided by 2 is 1. X cubed divided by x is x squared. All right, same thing here. 2 divided by 2 is 1. And x squared divided by x is x. Negative 24 divided by 2 is negative 12. And x divided by x is just 1. So it looked like it was going to be a difficult problem because it had a number in front of the x and it had a cube. But it's actually kind of an easy one because now there's a 1 in front of the x squared. All right, so I'm going to do my box. I'm going to do my t. My first box has an x squared. My last one has a negative 12. My t has a negative 12. All right, factors of negative 12 include it's going to be a little bit of a long list. 2 and negative 2 and 6. 2 and negative 6. Negative 3 and 4. Oh, not a very long list. That wasn't bad. And they need to add up to the middle number. So they need to add up to 1. The pair that adds up to 1, negative 3 and positive 4. All right. And then negative 3 here, positive 4 here. Man, starting to do these fast. All right, so I did have this 2x hanging out on the outside. Now I know I have an x plus 4, and I have an x minus 3. Got it. Cool, cool, cool. And they want to know what the solutions are. Remember, to find the solutions, make each piece equal to 0. 2x equals 0. Divide by 2. 0 divided by 2 is 0. There's one solution. All right, make the next piece equal to 0. X plus 4 equals 0. I know that's going to be negative 4. Subtract 4 on both sides. X equals negative 4. Make the other piece equal to 0. X minus 3 equals 0. I know it's going to be positive 3. Add 3 to both sides. X equals positive 3. So my solutions are 0, negative 4, and positive 3. All right, in the grand finale, factor the polynomial. So again, this one does have a GCF. I am going to teach you a shortcut in just a second. It does have a GCF of 9, so I could factor out a 9. 36 divided by 9 is 4, x squared. And 81 divided by 9 is 9. So I could factor out that 9 to have smaller numbers. And remember, this is one because it doesn't have the middle term. So they have to multiply to give us, it's not just negative 9 here because we have a number in front of the x squared. So negative 9 times that number in front. All right, and they have to add up to give us the middle term. And there is no middle term. So they have to add to 0. They have to add up to 0. So factors of 36 include 1 and 36, negative 1. Oh, one of them has to be negative. 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, 5, nope, 6 and 6. That's the end of my list. So I know that they have to add up to 0. So my winner, winner, chicken dinner is this pair right here. All right, so I know that I'm going to have a 6x and a negative 6x here. Now let's look at GCFs. What goes into both of these terms? Well, they both have an x, and it's a 4 and a 6. So 2 goes into both of them. 2 goes into both of these as well. 2 times what would give me 6? Well, that's a positive 3. 2 times what would give me a negative 6? Well, that's a negative 3. So factored, I had the 9 in front, and I have a 2x plus 3, and another 2x minus 3, though. Okay, there is a shortcut to this. All right, it's going to look a little different, but this has a shortcut. because this number 36 and x squared are perfect squares, and 81 is a perfect square, this is called a difference of squares. So you kind of see how it played out. It was the same thing on both sides, but one was a plus and one was a minus. So I can do number 11 very quickly. My two binomials are going to be the square root of the first term, and then a plus and a minus, the square root of the second term. Square root of 81 is 9. So I know my answer looks a little bit different than the answer at the bottom, but they're equal. They're the same. All right? So this is a good answer for number 11 as well. It's a shortcut. It's just saying, hey, it's the square root of the first piece plus and minus the square root of the second piece. Let's go back and take a look at another one on the previous page.